It had been snowing heavily in the first couple of months into 2021 in the Asahikawa district of Hokkaido, Japan, notably heavier in February. By March, the sun was finally shining, which was a nice change of pace after kicking off the year with mostly cloudy days. It would be a year since the COVID pandemic forced people to stay in their homes. While people were still cautious, staying 6 feet away from others and wearing masks, it was also normal for people to go out when it's necessary, like buying groceries or running an errand. You would only have to go out if there was something you needed. However, there was a teenage girl sitting by herself on a park bench. Typically, you mind your own business, but then you start to wonder to yourself, what is a girl doing by herself when she should be staying home? Or isn't she afraid that she's going to get COVID staying out by herself for too long? But that wasn't what she was worried about. In fact, that was the last thing in her mind. When you take a closer look at her, you start to think that she looks unusually still. You think your mind is playing tricks, but then you realize that something is wrong with her. Very, very wrong. Why is this teenager sitting by herself on a bench? What happened in her life that pushed her to sit on the bench? It's a weird question to ask, but her story is a tragic, heart-wrenching case that enraged Japanese netizens. Saaya Hirose was born in 2007 in the Asahikawa district of Hokkaido, Japan, and was raised by her single mother. There is no information regarding her father I could find on the internet, but it seems like her mother tried to be involved in her life as much as possible. Saaya was passionate about drawing, and her mother would describe her as a great artist. Even though she had a talent for art, she knew she wanted to help people when she grew up and had dreams of becoming a public prosecutor at a young age. At the age of 12, she attended Asahikawa Municipal Junior High School in spring of 2019. She was a part of a friend group consisting of students from her school as well as from other schools, some even 2 years older than her. This should have been where she would be making fond memories with her new set of friends, but unfortunately, this is where her life took a turn for the worse. It began when one of the male students asked for her to take nude photos and videos of herself pleasuring herself through a messaging app called Line. Initially, she refused, but after being threatened multiple times, she ultimately gave in. From there, the male student distributed these photos and videos to other group chats. It eventually turned to making fun of her, making her use her money to pay for their snacks, and calling her at midnight to make her do menial tasks. That was around the time when her mother noticed her daughter acting strangely. Saaya's attitude had changed completely, and she has expressed suicidal feelings. Her mother speculated that she was being bullied, so she went to her school for help. However, her concerns were brushed off, one teacher even telling her that, quote, "Those kids are too stupid to bully." In another incident where she went to the school for help, one teacher implied that she was a burden, asking if she could wait until the next day because she had a date with her boyfriend. Mind you, a teacher who was supposed to be responsible for students told the mother to hold off on the bullying accusations for the next day because her boyfriend was more important than a student's well-being. Saaya's mother contacted the school 4 times over the course of 3 months, and it all fell onto deaf ears. With each passing day, the school did nothing to help her, the worse the bullying got. Before we proceed, I'd like to break down what is bullying and how to identify the different types of bullying that occurs in school. According to StopBullying.gov, bullying is unwanted, aggressive behavior among school-aged children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. During my research, I ran into a multitude of bullying types, but I did find the 4 most common ones that occur on school grounds. Based on the website rachelschallenge.org, the 4 types are physical, which is harming someone or their possession; verbal, which is using insults or name-calling; Social, spreading misinformation or rumors about a victim with the end result being that they become an outcast. And cyberbullying, which is using social media to negatively impact a person, whether it be using threats or spreading misinformation or unwarranted content. Lately, East Asian countries have been in the news for being notorious for bullying running rampant in schools, with media like the South Korean drama The Glory or the Chinese film Better Days shows us how low students can go simply for the satisfaction of seeing another's suffering. It doesn't shine a good light on how schools tackle the topic either. There also needs to be an understanding that bullying is a universal problem, not strictly just in East Asian countries. Personally, I think with the international rise of the East Asian media also comes with an interest in the quote dark side of these countries, Japan included. With a country that brought us amazing things such as anime, video games, and food, it's not a surprise that people would be fascinated with their morbid side as well. Whether that be their unethical overworking culture, suicide issue, or absolutely minimal punishment on juveniles, of course bullying would be one of them. In 2011, a 13-year-old boy from Otsu Municipal Junior High School in the Shiga Prefecture took his life due to extreme bullying. It went as far as his bullies had him practice suicide methods, and about 60 students had witnessed this. Despite that, the school went through great lengths to cover it up. His parents fought relentlessly to guarantee that their son gets the justice that he deserves. And by 2013, the district court of Otsu held 3 students responsible for his death, and they were ordered to pay the family 30 million yen, which is about $343,000 US. This case resulted in the government creating a law called Law for the Advancement of a Strategy to Stop Bullying, which is a mouthful. This means that schools will be held responsible to immediately detect bullying and report any incidents, which, I mean, should be the bare minimum, but this is a start. The Japan Ministry of Education found that whenever bullying is reported to the school, these cases would most often than not close within 3 months, resulting in no serious punishments against the bullies. They did a survey in 2016 in which they reported that there had been 320,000 cases of bullying. By 2019, it nearly doubled to 610,000 cases. While I'm not an expert in Japan, I feel like part of the reason, not entirely, why there's been an increase is because there's been a bigger focus on bullying in the media, as I iterated before. Of course, there's always the fact that students lash out due to stress or other various reasons, but I do think that now there are more eyes on Japan's education system, so they feel more pressured to take a deeper look. There is another reason why I think there's been an increase, but I'll get to that more later. An incident occurred where Saaya was cornered by her bullies. They threatened her to make sexually explicit acts in front of everybody publicly. She felt powerless to cry for help or make an attempt to escape, so she had no choice but to do what she was told. Immediately following this, those bullies told her that she should kill herself, and if she doesn't, then they'll spread the sexually explicit content they just filmed of her to the entire school. Once again, feeling like she had no control in the situation, she jumped into a nearby river. Thankfully, she was saved by nearby teachers. This incident resulted in the police getting involved to investigate. But what was the result of their investigation? Only one male student was in charge with distribution of child pornography. However, he wasn't prosecuted to the fullest extent because he was still 14, so he basically got away scotch-free. And for the rest of the students, they were merely given scolding and warnings to not do this again. The police were able to delete the images of Saaya, but in a frustrating turn of events, one of the students kept a backup of the images and spread it across the school. Even after this, that student was never punished for their distribution of child pornography. News broke out about the bullying, and the perpetrator's parents were interviewed by Shukun Bunchun online. The parents denied that their children did anything wrong. In fact, they confidently claimed that it was the fault of her home environment for being raised by a single mother. The school's principal was also interviewed, and he denied that bullying had occurred. But at the same time, he contradicted himself by saying that they took the proper measures after the river incident, indirectly confirming that the bullying did occur. Even if he chose to take action, the incident happened off school grounds, so they had no power to do anything, according to him. An internal investigation had been done by the school as well as the city education authorities. And the Board of Education, Hiroki Sujinami, concluded that no bullying had occurred. He never released the results publicly. In the middle of this chaos, Saaya was diagnosed with PTSD from the river incident. As any mother would do, she was enraged and got a lawyer involved to talk to the school. While the school had agreed to talk to her lawyer, they weren't allowed to be involved in the school's discussion, nor were they allowed to record anything. With all the back and forth, they managed to hold an apology meeting, where one of the bullies apologized, but immediately defended themselves by saying they were only watching the bullying, not participating. The school had the galls to tell Saaya's mother and the lawyer that they had to take into consideration that the perpetrators have futures too. When I read that, I actually had to look away from my research to just debrief. I've read so many cases where perpetrators are protected more than the victims, and no matter how many times I read them, I will never understand that argument that we have to protect these horrible monsters' future, even though they clearly made the decision to harm another person. I should also mention that while researching, there was something that I felt like I also had to add for context. In Japan, or Asia in general, they function differently as a society, differently from the West. What I mean is that in the United States, for example, we push the idea of being independent, meaning your well-being is more important than others. However, in Asian countries, it's the opposite. Valuing a group of people is more important than prioritizing yourself. This is deeply rooted in Japan's culture since ancient times. By putting others before yourself, everybody would achieve social harmony. That's why Japan is so clean. You, a citizen walking on the street, would rather pick up the trash on the ground so that it wouldn't burden others. If somebody messed up your order at a restaurant, you would rather not cause a scene in public because that would disturb others. On a side note, there was a story I read on Reddit where somebody in Japan had their bike stolen, only for that person to have their bike returned with a written note apologizing for stealing their bike because they were running late for work. It doesn't pertain to the story, but I thought that was just weirdly wholesome. And I had nobody else to share it to, so I just wanted to say that. I live in the United States, but I'm also Southeast Asian, and my family also lives by this notion of group mentality over individuality, so I can sort of understand this thought process. Asian Analysis with Al and Helen explains this practice way better than I can. I highly recommend you watch this video from them. It's about a different case, but they do briefly talk about Saaya and Japanese culture. Link to their video is in the description below. So going back to the main topic, with this in the back of our mind, from the school's perspective, Saaya's mother is being a burden to others by being persistent in getting justice for her daughter. In order to avoid the disruption of social harmony, it's better for the school to protect the perpetrators than Saaya, who is just one person. Because harming the perpetrators would not only mean harming their families, but it will also harm their future endeavors as well. It would be easier in the principal's eyes to protect 10 bullies than one person. Now, this is not me excusing the way the school handled the situation. Even though he's protecting the perpetrators to avoid making their families distraught, he's ultimately making the choice that as the adult in the situation to allow bad behavior to simmer in his school. Being the role model for the students, he's telling his entire school that, hey, it's okay to bully because he'll be there to protect them. The school would not allow Saaya's mother to release what they discussed to the public. She was not allowed, but the principal gladly sat in front of journalists to speak his mind. In the same interview with the Shunkan Bunshun online, he had the audacity to confidently state that Saaya's suicidal feelings had existed before the incident. In fact, it's Saaya's fault for running away from the situation, which, in his opinion, is an act of self-harm. It was too much for Saaya and her mother to handle, so she transferred to a different school. However, her suicidal thoughts never left. She no longer was the same person she was before 2019. Drawing wasn't interesting to her anymore, nor did she feel like she had a future. Eventually, she became a recluse and would not leave her bedroom. Even though it was challenging to move on from the past, time still marched forward. On a snowy night on February 13th, 2021, Saaya's mother had to leave the house to run an errand. She asked her daughter if she would like to join and eat out for dinner. She declined the offer and only wanted a bento from the convenience store. Before she left, she told her mother to stay safe. That would be the last words she would ever hear from her daughter. While out, her mother's phone rang, and to her surprise, it was from the police. They told her that they had to perform a wellness check on Saaya. She thought it was strange since she had just seen her daughter right before she went out. While yes, she was struggling with her mental health, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The police explained that Saaya had sent concerning messages to a friend on Discord, implying that she wanted to commit suicide. Now very concerned for her daughter, she made a mad dash back home, and to her utmost fear, her daughter was missing. The police sent out a search party for her, but they were unable to locate her. Her mother would not have an answer until a month later on March 23rd. By then, the snow had melted, and as it turns out, Saaya was near her home all along. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, she was sitting on a park bench by herself. She had frozen to death. It's likely believed that she was so distraught from the trauma she suffered from all the bullying that she just sat there, wallowing in her own pain until her eyes closed as hypothermia took over. All Saaya wanted was to be free from her bullying, but almost everybody failed her. Her school, the principal, the bullies, and the bullies' families. The only person who was actually there for her was her mother, the only person who stood for what's right. When news broke about her death, the internet was obviously enraged at how avoidable this all was. Many people pointed out how contradicting the principal's statement was, saying that they took the appropriate measures against the bullying, but then swiftly saying that there was no bullying at all. Others were angry at how absolutely nobody was being held accountable for her death. Some notable people from Japan spoke out about Saaya's death as well. Shiori, a sex ed YouTuber, made a tweet, quote, "Once it was found out that there had been sexual assault, the adults should have defended and provided care for the victim. They should have told the perpetrators that they had done something unforgivable. Instead, they only cared about defending themselves. Adults need to learn that there are human rights that need to be protected." There was another tweet that spoke volumes as well, which is from the Twitter handle Hoshinojikan, quote, "The sexual abuse case from Asahikawa. It's too gruesome, and reading the article is painful. The way her teacher acted as if it had nothing to do with her, the fact that not a single person from the school came to her funeral, the fact that school members refused to be in the same room as the family's lawyer, and the perpetrator's students' complete lack of remorse. Not a single person is being punished. One of Saaya's perpetrators did an interview after her passing. She was somebody who Saaya once considered her friend, but was only betrayed after discovering that this friend was in the Line group chat where they first distributed the sexually explicit photos. What does she think about Saaya's death? Well, according to her words, she honestly didn't think anything about it. As a response to the uproar, the Asahikawa Municipal Junior High School would be investigated by a third party in September 2022. They concluded that there is no conclusive evidence to prove that her death was a result of the PTSD from the bullying. Her death could have been caused by maladjustment to the new school or loneliness. Clearly dissatisfied with this outcome, her family did what any family would do and pushed for justice. They kept making public appearances to spread awareness. This eventually garnered the attention of Asahikawa Mayor Masahito Nishikawa. He demanded that the education authorities have another investigation. He appointed Ogi Naoki as the head of the investigation with a team consisting of a psychiatrist, social worker, lawyer, and a scholar. Ogi stated in a conference, quote, "It is evident that the trauma from bullying, flashbacks, and various other factors had a lasting impact, causing her prolonged suffering." The lawyer of the team, Takeshi Nomura, was open about the school's terrible handling of the bullying, saying, quote, "The case is a problem behavior by offending students, not bullying, and neglecting to recognize and deal with the bullying. Overall, they found that she was bullied by 7 students, and there were 6 known cases of bullying in spring of 2019. This is on top of constantly being asked for sexually explicit photos." On June 13, 2023, Saaya's mother sued an anonymous woman who was spreading misinformation on the internet, saying that her mother was responsible for her death. Her lawyer stated that this online post caused her emotional distress and that this would hopefully teach people a lesson not to carelessly post false information onto the internet. Ultimately, her mother won 1.6 million yen, which is about $12,000 in court. The third investigation finally ended in, I believe, around July of this year, 2024. They found evidence which shows that the main factor of her suicide was the bullying. The most recent update I managed to find was that just this September, the Asahikawa Education Board applied for the Accident and Injury Mutual Aid benefit. This means that medical treatments and condolence money can be offered to parents of children who were injured or died under school supervision. Condolence money can go as high as 30 million yen, which is $212,000. Despite the help of the mayor and a new investigation team, the most unfortunate aspect of this is that, so far, none of the bullies had been punished for what they've done to Saaya. This was such a tragic case to research. I don't know, while researching it, I just felt so frustrated that I actually had to look away from my computer screen multiple times because of the lack of care the school had for Saaya. And by the end of my research, I just felt so empty. Like, sure, the school is making plans to hopefully pay her family, but nobody who was involved is getting punished as far as I know. The perpetrators are still getting away with it. There's literally an interview with one of them, and they said that they don't think they're responsible whatsoever and they don't care about Saaya's death. Allegedly, in my opinion. Even though it looks like her case is coming to an end, if there are any major updates on the case, then please leave it in the comments or let me know and I can make a follow-up sometime in the future. Otherwise, please have a good rest of your day, and thank you so much for listening to Saaya's story, as it would probably mean so much for her family.